Hello, friend. Do you like Lua? Do you like to make games? Have you ever wanted to use your love for Lua to make games? Well, this video is for you. Now, let me tell you, what I want to do here is I'm gonna show you the code editor that I'm using, and I'll just show you real quick how to install it. And I've got an extension for that code editor that will let us do some nice things with all of our little love files, the Lua files. And we'll just talk about love just a little bit, and then we'll get started. We'll write like a little love 2D thing that just prints some stuff and whatnot. So what you see here right in front of you is Visual Studio Code, and you can go to code.visualstudio.com and you can pick it up. It's really a great editor, and you can get it for all the platforms, Mac, Windows, and Linux. Hey, it's fantastic. Love it. So you download that. If you want to follow along with me and use the stuff I'm using, you can. You don't have to. You can use any text editor you want. That's what's wonderful about this stuff. It's just a bunch of text files is all it is. You can use Notepad++, you can use the Atom editor, you can use Sublime, you can use anything really, as long as it writes text files. I'm going to use this. So if you want to follow along, download this, install it, and then go over here to the marketplace for Visual Studio, the Visual Studio Code Marketplace, and search for Love 2D. And you will see there is a plugin here that I have done recently that has snippets for the Love 2D API as of Love 0.10.1. Whatever the latest is whenever I did this. I believe it's 10.1. And so you get snippets for it, and you also get an ability to basically have it run the Love 2D executable on the folder that you have open in Visual Studio. So it's kind of nice quick way to execute your files while you're developing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go over here, hit Control P. I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to install that. We'll click Install, and then I'll click Reload because it has to activate the extension, and we'll get going. Now, while that's doing that, it's actually finished, but we'll say this. Love 2D, as we said, is a Lua-based engine. It's actually SDL2, which is it's a simple direct media library or something like that. It's actually based off of that. It's taken a simple direct media layer, and it's actually taken that, and they have wrapped it up and made it Lua callable. And what's nice in addition of that is Love 2D also contains and uses LuaJIT by default, and LuaJIT is legit because it basically compiles Lua to machine code, and it's blazingly fast. I mean, it's fantastic. Lovely. So as far as speed, you're not going to have to really worry about that. Okay, so we've got the Love 2D support installed here, and a couple of things you may want to check out and change, and that is you go into Settings, and actually it tells you right here on the Details page. You've got some key bindings. You can change that if you want. Right now the key to run Love 2D on the current project folder is Alt plus the L key. If you don't want it to be, you can take this, copy it, and go up here into File, Preferences, Keyboard Shortcuts, and you'll see right here there's a place where you can override any of the ones that are currently set or are set by the any of the extensions you have installed. So if I want to make it Alt-M, that's all I got to do. But I don't want to do that. I like Alt-L just fine. Surprise, surprise. And the other thing is, you have a couple of settings, at least at this point for this version of the Love 2D support plugin. You need to set the path to where you have the Love 2D executable located, and this is where it is set by default. And whether or not you want to show the debug console, and the debug console is nice whenever you're developing. And I just saw an error in my in my README file. I have to fix that. So if you want to show the debug console, you just set to true, otherwise false. And I think this is Windows only, but I haven't tested this plugin on the Mac or on Linux yet. And I'll do that. I'll do that. And so all this stuff will get updated. I mean, it's kind of growing. I mean, it's evolving. It's like, what version did I set it at? 0.1.2, I think, is the latest one as of the recording of this video. So it'll change and evolve, and hopefully it'll get better, you know. So anyway, if I want to set that path, I can grab this and I can copy it, and I can go to File, Preferences, Settings, and then you see right here you've got your user specific settings, and that's where you want it. You can do workspace settings, but they only apply to the specific workspace you're in. So I want to do user settings. So here's where I've done mine, and I've changed my path to where my the Love2D executable is, and I've said yes, I want the debug window to be displayed. And again, that's useful if you want to just print stuff to the command line, just plain old prints, like for debugging. So with all that out of the way, I'm going to close that, and I'm going to close this. So now we have this empty window. What's kind of nice is you can bring this bar, you can expand this bar up and up and back, expand it and contract it by hitting Control, or I would assume in the Mac, Control or Command B, and that opens up and closes the bar, and it opens it up and closes it wherever you last had it selected, because you've got the Explorer, you've got Search, you've got Git, and you've got Debug, which doesn't work at this point. That would be cool to have that all hooked up. And then you've got the Marketplace extensions place, or the extensions tab, so you can search for extensions and see all you have installed. So we're going to go back to the Explorer, and you can see under Open Editors, well, I don't have any files open right now, but there's some nice little icons that you can use to help manage the open files and such. Right now, I have created a directory called Tutorial, and the way to open a folder, which you need to do in order to be able to use the Love2D extension, you just go over here and you click Open Folder, and then you select the folder that you want to open, and then voila, it opens. Okay, so now we're set up to do what we need to do. Now, let me just step aside for just a second and say that Love2D does use Lua. It uses LuaJIT, and LuaJIT supports Lua 5.1. So if you know Lua, then fantastic. If you don't know Lua, then you're still okay, because if you go over here to lua.org, which is where you can get the original Lua, you can go to the documentation link, and it's got a nice little place called Books. And the latest version is this one right here, the 4th edition, and it's Lua 5.3. I happen to have this one right here, as you can see, Programming in Lua, 3rd edition, and that is Lua 5.2. And you can grab that one. He notes the differences between Lua 5.2 and 5.1 in that book. It's a great book, and it's a nice way to kind of support the guy who made the language and released it open source and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't want to do that, you can also click this link, and you can get to the 1st edition, which was aimed at Lua 5.0, but it really is, as it says, still largely relevant, because most all of the stuff, especially the basics, are the same. So there's your language reference if you don't want to buy a book. But like I said, the books are great, and you know, it kind of says, hey man, I appreciate your language, and I'm going to give you some support for that. So there you go. There's your Lua sort of reference. And there are a lot of tutorials on YouTube and on online just in general, as far as just general tutorials on Lua. But you kind of get the gist of it, especially if you've done some programming before, by just looking at some of the Love2D examples. Now, you see, what you also want to do is you want to download your Love2D distribution of choice, be that Windows, Mac, or Linux. And and I'll say this, you can run Love2D applications on Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, and iOS. And you can also run it on the web via HTML5, and that is by utilizing this, at least at this current time. There is a fine person by that name right there who has gone and taken the entire Love source code and ported it to the web, and he's done that using Emscripten, the wonderful, lovely Emscripten that compiles C code to JavaScript so that it can run on the web. Pretty cool stuff, big deal. But I will say this, right now, as of the recording of this video, you're looking at, it's a direct port of the existing Love 0.1.0 code, and we are looking at Love 0.10.2, I believe. Yes, right here, 0.10.2. So it's a little bit behind, you know, and as of this recording, it's been a little while since he's messed with this. So hopefully this will be different by the time, you know, you look at this. But so that's how you can get your stuff to run on the web using Love. And packaging your Love 2D, you know, assets, including the code, there are some tools that you can use to do that as well, and in such a way that you don't have to have that Love 2D, you know, directory that we were looking at right here. Basically, all of this stuff right here. You basically use this, but you encapsulate it in such a way that it basically becomes an executable, and then the person can just run it. And I believe on the iOS, when you want to build on iOS, you actually pull in an Xcode project, and then you stick your source code in. Yeah, see, there you go. You stick your source code into a certain place. I think there's directions on how to do it, and then you compile it, and then you can actually release a game, a Love 2D game on iOS, which is really cool. And then there's the other versions here, which is just the different, you know, different sources and stuff for the actual source. This is where the source code is actually stored under at Bitbucket. And these are the downloads, and then you can go over here and then see there it is right there, Love. So if you want, you know, bleeding edge, you can come here and you can compile it yourself. Haven't done that yet, but who knows? Might take that adventure sometime. So with that done and said, let's get into kind of how Love works. Now, what Love is going to do whenever you have a folder, you got your folder, and you're going to put your code and your assets in this folder. And assets are sound files, graphics files, you know, that kind of stuff, level files, however you want to just do that. Now, Love is different than Unity 3D or than Unreal in that there's really not a higher level framework necessarily. You're given the basic stuff that you need to create things. And again, it's built on SDL, which is a really nice and strong basic framework that has been used in a lot of games to do cross-platform development. It's great stuff. So you're getting some great stuff, but you just have to build a little more infrastructure on top of that. But once again, the community here has you covered on a lot of this stuff, because you can go and find a lot of libraries that will help you with different types of things that you want to do. You know, some of these libraries are a little juvenile as far as the names, but you know, you can just use a different library if you don't, you know, if that matters to you. But let's dive right in, and what you have to do first is you need to create a file called main.lua, and that is where Love 2D it'll look for that file, and that's where it will begin executing your code. So this is the file. This is like, you know, the main.c file, or main in Java, or main in C#. It's where everything starts. It's the entry point to your program. And okay, so there is a couple of functions. There's several functions actually that Love uses in its render loop, or its run loop, and which, by the way, you can change. You can actually modify the run loop, but honestly, the default run loop seems to be fine. I mean, you can actually see it here. It's on the wiki, and so that sort of gives you an idea of what is being done for the run loop. And you could actually override it by just implementing this function here, and then you could put your own stuff in there and do whatever you want. But we're not going to do that, and I don't know at this point why you would want to, unless you had some really specific requirements. So, well, what's the smallest thing that we can do to get something on the screen? Well, there is a callback that Love2D makes whenever it's in its run loop, and that is there's a function called love.draw, and if you implement that, the run loop, the default run loop, will call that. So let's implement love.draw, and here we are. So what that does is it's called whenever within the run loop to draw to the screen. So anything you want to draw to the screen, you do it in love.draw. And now, in addition, whenever you want to draw anything to the screen, you've got these nice little namespaces that they have sort of pulled out for you. And love.graphics, yeah, that sounds right. And you click on that, and you get all of these nice functions and different things in these nice little tables. And the one that we want to use just initially, we'll do love.graphics.print. So we'll do that, and it asks for text for the first argument. So we'll say, hi there, people. If I can spell people right, people. And it's not going to be very exciting, so I'm not, And we want an x coordinate, so that's the x coordinate. And oh yes, the graphics. Whenever you're doing graphics, you can see it's the 0, 0 coordinate is in the top left-hand corner of the screen. So x, y, 0 is in the top left-hand corner, and then x increases going to the right, and y increases going down. So that's an important distinction, especially if you're coming from other different development environments for games or graphics. So let's put this lovely little piece of text at 10, 100, and then the rest of this stuff we don't care about. Those are sort of optional things, so we don't need that. I'm going to save that, and then I'll do Alt-L to run it. And what did I do wrong? Oh, look, yeah, function. No, we're not doing function. This is not repetitious, so we'll run it again. Boom. So there you go. Hi there, people, and it was indeed printed 100, y down 100, and then x in 10. Now, what else is kind of nice about the plugin is you can leave this up, and you can leave it running, and you can change this, save it, reload, and it will clear away that last. So it only allows the one instance of Love2D to run. So that's kind of nice. Okay, well, why would we want this command or console window here? What's the purpose of this? Okay, well, to explain that, let's just add another function in here, which is called, and this callback function is called whenever Love2D first loads your program. Before it runs anything, it's called once whenever you execute the program, just one time. So it's a good time to do any kind of initialization stuff, loading images or requiring different files and stuff like that, or instantiating some of your objects or whatever. And that is, and I'm just going to do this since the snippet includes it, it's love.load. And notice that it has this arg parameter in here. Well, we're not going to use that, but you can actually use that to receive arguments from, like if you run your program from command line, you can actually pass arguments into it this way, and you can receive them. But we don't need arguments, so we're not even going to include it because we don't have to. We don't need them. Okay, so this is executed one time when your program runs. Every time, once, just once. So this is why you would want the console window. Is if you want to do debugging stuff and print things, not necessarily to the graphics canvas, you know, to the actual screen, but you want to do some debugging stuff, quote, behind the scenes. And so if I do this, do Alt L again, then you see we have this console. So it prints to this console window. So that's the benefit of using the debugger, or the debugged version. And really all that's doing is it's calling, at least on Windows, it's calling the lovec.exe is doing that. But I'll tell you right now, I'm gonna turn that off for now, because it's just cleaner for this particular thing. So I'm gonna tell that I don't want the debug, so that means it's not gonna, I'll show you, it's not gonna pull up the console window anymore for a while. Okay, so there we go. Okay, there's one other function in addition that we'll want, and that is called love.update. And love.update is called every game tick, and the DT is short for delta time, and that gives you the amount of time that has passed since the last update, and that is quite useful to use, especially whenever you're doing speeds and velocities and just, you know, and acceleration, all that kind of stuff. So that's an important parameter that you'll end up using probably quite a bit. So these are really the main functions that you will have in your main.lua file. And again, there's some other libraries that make some other things possible, and you can have just kind of different things. But this was how we're going to start with just the basic kind of stuff. And just real quick, we can go here to the main page. We can say, I believe it's under getting started. Yeah, well, it's basically telling you, boom, hello world. And we're not going to put anything in update right now. I guess what I want to talk about now is configuration. So there's a bunch of different things that you can configure with your Love2D application, and they're all nicely specified here in this config files page on the Love2D site. So what you want to do is, if you want to utilize that, which you will, you want to create a new file, and you want to call it conf.lua, and in that file you want to say love.conf, and you say t, and then you say n. So there's our function, and this of course explains exactly how it works. It takes one argument, which is that little t, and again, remember, this is a callback, so Love calls this before everything loads so that it can get any kind of configuration changes that you want to make before everything gets started up. So it takes an argument, a table, as an argument, and then you can basically take that table and you can change all of these different parameters, and basically customize your game that way, or your application. I'm going to grab this, the width and the height, so you can basically set the width and the height of the screen that you want to deal with, or the canvas. And I'm going to say, let's do not 1280 by 720, but let's do half that. That would be 640 by 360. All right, so now when I load this, or I run it, see, my window's a little different. It's smaller. You know, we can go down farther. We can go, what would that be? What did I do? 640? We could do 320 by 180, and you'll watch, and that window will be even smaller. So we're going to stick with, I guess we'll stick with 640 by 360 for now. We can always come in and change it, but it's the greatest thing. And also, there is a full screen here, and you can actually have everything start in full screen. You can also toggle all these types of things at runtime with some other calls to some other functions, which we can look at later. Okay, so what have we figured out here at the beginning? Well, the simplest Love2D program will consist of a main.lua file that is shoved into a directory named whatever you want, and it will have, at a minimum, it will have a function that responds to the love.draw callback that looks like this. And in that, you can put all sorts of different things. I mean, we can even draw love.graphics.rectangle, and you can draw a rectangle. And let's see, the modes are actually in, if you want to look for the modes, I happen to know one of them, but you can come over here, love.graphics.rectangle, and then you can see draw mode. So we go to the draw mode, and it will tell us fill and line. So if I put in here line, that means it'll just draw an outline. And then for X, we'll put 20. No. Let's put 120. And Y, let's put 100. And so now with the width and the height of the rectangle, we'll put 100, and we'll put 50. Okay, so now when we run that, we'll have us a little rectangle. And notice the color is a crummy old gray color. We can set the color before we draw things by doing love.graphics. What is it called? Color. Oh, now I'm not sure. What is it? What is it? How do you set the color? It's escaping me at the moment. It's color. That's the wrong one. That's what I'm. No, it's not right. That's not set. It's got to be set color. Set color. Set color. There it is. So you got a red, green, blue, alpha, and these go between 0 and 255. So it's you know, if I want maximum red, that would be 255. Maximum green would be 255. No blue would be 0, and then alpha, you know, you can go for anywhere from 0, which is completely transparent, to full opaque, which is 255. So let's make a, I don't know, a kind of reddish, and maybe a little bit of green, and then maybe mostly blue. And we don't the alpha is optional, so we don't have to. And if we don't, then it's set to 255, which is completely opaque. So that's what it looks like. And notice that it, for some reason, and I'll tell you why. For some reason now we're drawing this at purple whenever we just now set the color here. Well, when you set the color like this, Love2D remembers it. So the next time this draw function is called, the color's already been set here. So it's going to print the text up here in purple also. So to fix that, before we draw this text, we can say set the color to white, draw this, and then set the color to this purpley color, and then draw the rectangle. And let's change this also to fill. And boom, there we go. Now, let's just before we go here, let's just kind of get fun. Let's do something just kind of interesting. Now let's, instead of having the rectangle sit there, let's have it move a little bit. So I'm going to declare a local variable, because, you know, stay away from globals as much as you can, but you can do global variables in Lua, and all you have to do that is just assign, you know, boom. Now that's a global variable. It's a global variable X, and it can be used anywhere in any of the files that are required or utilized in this program, as long as they're required after this file is loaded. But I want it to be local to this file. In this case, since it's out of any of the functions. And if I wanted a local variable called Y, and I set it to 10, and I did it in this load function, it would be local to this load function, and it could only be seen inside of this function. So anyway, so there's my X. So I want to say, instead of drawing the rectangle 120, I want to use this variable and draw it at the X location, wherever that X might be. So that's going to move it over a little bit, which actually I guess we should probably do 110. And you know what? I didn't save that. You got to save it. There you go. Was it 110? Oh, it was 120. Okay, let me do 120. 120. Save, and then run. There we go. Okay, so let's animate this, and let's go. Let's take that X from 120 to, I don't know, some value, and then maybe, yeah, let's do that. So what we can do is we can say X, and something that Lua doesn't have are the plus equals, minus equals, divide equals. They don't have that, right? Is that, am I imagining things? They don't, it doesn't do that. Right, that's right. Yeah, you can't. Right? Yeah. You can't do that with Lua. You actually have to say x equals x plus 5. Now, if I do this, it's going to go, it's just going to go pretty fast. That's fine if that's what you like. But that is dependent upon the rate at which this update function is called. So what we want is something that is more, independent. We want to be able to specify a speed in a rate of sort of units per second. And in order to do that, we can say, okay, how fast do we want? Say we want to update at, I don't know. Let's update at 30 pixels per second. So the way we do that is 30 times that delta time. And when we do that, we'll get a speed that is independent of frame rate, regardless of whether it's 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, we'll move at this speed due to that delta time. So that's what you kind of want to do there. Let's make this go a little bit faster. Let's reload that. Yeah, it's a little bit better. All right, let's do one more thing before we go, and that is let's make this conditional. So when it reaches a certain point, let's have it turn around and go backwards. So we'll say, and here's how you can do it. You do if statements in Lua. You don't have to have parentheses. You can if you want, but you don't have to. That's one of those things I find myself doing this all the time with Lua is I put parentheses, and then I go back like, oh yeah, I don't have to have parentheses. So we'll take the parentheses out for now. We're just going to try to kind of be a Lua-y kind of, going to do it the Lua way. So let's say if x is less than, I don't know, how big was our window? 640. So let's do like 400. And now whenever you do this, in order to indicate the beginning of an if block, you do then. So if x is less than 400, then, and then you tell it what you want it to do. And we want it to do this. And then we can say, you can do else, or you can just end it. So when to end blocks in Lua, you use the end keyword. And we can also do else if. So we can say else if x is let me think here. What we really need is a direction for this sign. So let's bring another into another variable, and we'll call it dir for direction, and we'll say 1. It's 1. So what we'll do is we'll multiply this times this. So what we'll do is we'll flip this to a -1 to make it go the opposite way. So what we'll do is we don't need to do this. We'll say is if x, we can stick this back out here, and we can say if x is, let's do this, greater than or equal to 400, then x equals x times -1. So that will flip that x from -1 to +1 or from +1 to -1, whichever way it's going, but that's what we'll do for now. And then we'll say also else if x is less than, and we don't have to have that less than, just greater than, less than 120, and then and see, look, I put the parentheses. Then actually, let's do this. We don't even need to do that. All we're doing is flipping that x, and that's not going to be x. That's going to be the direction. Whoops. And we can say, and so here, instead of doing normally in C or C# you would have a double bar for or. Well, in Lua, it's actually you type out the word. So or x is less than 120, then we're going to flip that direction bit. And so now let's make it go a little bit faster too. Make it go 100. Now when we run this, we should see it here, and then whenever it reaches 400, it should go back, and when it reaches back over here, it should. So now we have some kind of movement. All right, so that's where I'm going to leave it for now, and the next time we come back, we'll explore maybe loading some images, doing some things with that. But oh look, something happened. Interesting. Oh, I think I probably know what it is. We probably have to set Yeah, because it's flipping it. Okay, I know what it's doing. Well, let's do this then. X plus equals, let's just add a little bit so that it doesn't get stuck like that. We'll add x plus, all right, we can't do that. Golly, x equals x plus 10 times the direction. And then we shouldn't see that get stuck. It should be fine. And it should bounce around. Just be fine. Yes. And you notice it kind of jiggles at the edges, but that's okay. I mean, we could make that less. We'll be more likely to kind of, and let's make it go faster. I'm getting distracted. Jink, jink. Okay, there you go. Next time we'll play with some images. We'll play with loading some images and maybe showing those and whatnot. But yeah, I think I'll leave it here. We've got about, what, 30 minutes or so we'll just, and it's still doing that. But again, yeah, see, I need something that's a little more, depending on the direction that it's going, it needs to kind of flip and just stay flipped. But that's okay. I mean, like I said, it's not a big deal. I'll fix that later. But in any case, hopefully you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.